Ukraine has launched a crazy plan to attack North Korea. 4:10 a.m., August 28, 2025. The peaceful skies above Kachon, North Korea, suddenly shook. 100 suicide drones, each assembled from smuggled parts and costing less than $300, roared into the night sky. Their mission? To wipe out one of North Korea's most secure military bases, home to 60 ballistic missiles, 90,000 gallons of jet fuel, 12,000 artillery shells, and supplies for 10,000 troops. But could such fragile machines, built from plywood, fiberglass, and salvaged electronics, really breach the steel shield of Pyongyang's war machine? The world would know in minutes. The first fireballs lit up the horizon. Why were the Ukrainian army able to carry weapons through checkpoints? Will Ukraine's plan succeed? And how will North Korea react? Let's find out the truth. August 12, 2025, 2:45 a.m. The remote industrial outskirts of Dandong, a Chinese border city less than 20 miles from North Korea, became the unlikely stage for one of Ukraine's most audacious covert operations. For nearly a month, Ukrainian intelligence officers had designed every detail of a plan that bordered on suicidal. Their goal? To strike at the heart of a fortified North Korean base with 100 suicide UAVs. An arsenal small in size, but carrying the destructive potential of a full missile strike. The logistics alone were staggering. Over 12 tons of UAV components, engines, wings, guidance systems, and explosive payloads had to be smuggled through layers of checkpoints. Rather than risk detection with complete weapons, the Ukrainians disguised the parts as 420 separate shipments, each marked as agricultural equipment or construction supplies. Piece by piece, these boxes crossed borders under the noses of inspectors who never suspected they were letting through an air fleet in disguise. By August 27th, the convoy of crates had reached a derelict warehouse hidden in a pine forest just 11 miles from the Korean frontier. Here, a team of 47 Ukrainian engineers and technicians worked in shifts around the clock. In just 15 days, they assembled 100 fully operational UAVs, each armed with a 20-kilogram explosive charge. Together, these drones represented a strike package worth less than $3 million in materials, but potentially capable of causing hundreds of millions in damage. Yet the plan almost unraveled. On the 7th night of assembly, August 20th, 2025, at precisely 11:37 p.m., 2 North Korean border guards wandered close to the compound. A faint whir from a test motor escaped into the darkness. The guards froze, sweeping their flashlights across the warehouse perimeter. Inside, the Ukrainians held their breath. Discovery would mean execution on the spot, the obliteration of all 47 operatives, and the collapse of the mission. In a split-second decision, the lead engineer yanked the main power breaker, plunging the building into silence. After a tense 90 seconds, the guards muttered, shrugged, and returned to their post. The crisis had passed. The mission had survived by seconds, and from that moment, everyone knew there would be no room for another mistake. Do you think there are fatal mistakes in war? Tell me in the comments. August 28th, 2025, 4:10 a.m. The warehouse lights in the pine forest went dark for the last time. The doors opened, and one by one, the first wave of Ukrainian UAVs slid silently into the night. Their mission was not to destroy, but to blind. 10 specially modified drones, each carrying a compact electromagnetic jamming pod designed by Ukraine's top defense engineers, rose into the sky. Flying at 200 feet above ground and hugging the terrain, they crossed into North Korean airspace at exactly 4:26 a.m. Their flight paths were precise, programmed to circle the perimeter radars for maximum effect. At 4:29 a.m., the pods activated. An invisible storm of electronic noise erupted, flooding the early warning radars stationed near Sinuiju and Kaichon. For 15 minutes, the most fortified defense network in East Asia went blind. North Korean operators panicked. The main surveillance radars showed only static. Tracking systems screamed with false alarms. Searchlights swept the sky at random, but there was nothing to see. "Targets lost! All signals jammed!" one officer shouted, pounding the console. In the command bunker, chaos spread as officers argued whether this was an equipment failure or an act of war. Inside the Ukrainian control station, 11 miles from the border, commanders watched in silence. The countdown clock ticked mercilessly: 00:14:52, 00:12:35, 00:11:04. Every second mattered. Then came the signal from Kiev, a message from Lieutenant General Dmytro Havrilenko, the architect of the mission. In war, the first strike belongs not to those with the most missiles, but to those who can blind the enemy before he even knows he is under attack. Today, gentlemen, history favors the bold. At 4:31 a.m., the remaining UAVs stirred to life. Motors ignited, wings unfolded, and dozens of dark silhouettes rose above the forest canopy. They waited only for the jammers to finish their deadly dance. Once the enemy's eyes were fully shut, the true storm would begin. The clock was running. Ukraine had less than 900 seconds to unleash its fury. Before we get into the real battle, let me know where in the world you are watching from, and don't forget to support us by liking and subscribing to the channel. August 28th, 2025, 4:32 a.m. The second wave roared into action. 40 Ukrainian suicide UAVs lifted into the night sky, their engines buzzing like a swarm of mechanical hornets. Each carried a 20-kilogram shaped charge warhead, engineered to punch through reinforced bunkers and radar arrays. Unlike the jamming drones, these were killers, programmed for precision. Their first targets were North Korea's air defense systems. The KN-06 Red Banner surface-to-air missile batteries, mobile radar trucks, and stationary anti-aircraft guns spread across a 12-mile defensive perimeter. Ukraine's military intelligence had mapped them meticulously, down to the coordinates of each launcher. The technology at work was ruthless in its simplicity. Each UAV operated on a decentralized swarm algorithm, meaning if one was shot down, the others instantly recalibrated their trajectories. In effect, the swarm was like water. When blocked in one path, it surged through another. This was Ukraine's answer to North Korea's doctrine of layered defense. At 4:35 a.m., the swarm struck. The first 6 UAVs dove into a radar dome west of Sinuiju, obliterating it in a blinding fireball. Seconds later, 8 more slammed into missile launchers, detonating with enough force to flip the steel tubes like matchsticks. The shockwaves rippled across the base, tearing through barracks and igniting fuel trucks. North Korea's gunners scrambled to respond. Anti-aircraft fire ripped into the sky, over 1,200 rounds in the first 2 minutes, but they were shooting blind. The jammers were still active, and the UAVS's flight paths were erratic, twisting in impossible arcs designed to confuse targeting systems. Operators locked onto phantom signals, firing at empty skies while the real drones descended on them like executioners. By 4:41 a.m., 26 air defense positions had been annihilated. Explosions shook the ground with the force of 5 tons of TNT. Surveillance cameras caught missile silos blooming into towers of flame, their warheads cooking off in a chain reaction. A single strike on an ammunition depot caused a secondary blast equivalent to 40,000 artillery shells detonating at once, flattening everything within a half-mile radius. The scale of destruction was staggering. In less than 10 minutes, North Korea's frontline air defense network, valued at over $750 million, was reduced to twisted steel and burning craters. From their hidden command center, Ukrainian officers exchanged silent glances. The impossible had been achieved. The enemy's shield, once thought impenetrable, now lay in ruins. But there was no time to celebrate. The clock was still ticking on the radar blackout. Ukraine had just 7 minutes left to deliver the next blow, the strike that would shatter North Korea's war machine from within. Are you there? Don't leave yet. Here's the final blow to Ukraine. August 28, 2025, 4:44 a.m. With North Korea's air defense grid in ruins, the third wave of Ukraine's suicide UAVs surged forward. 30 drones programmed for the most devastating task of all, destroying the lifeblood of the enemy's war machine. Their targets were not soldiers or radar systems, but the warehouses and fuel reserves hidden deep inside the Kaichon military district. Intelligence reports had pinpointed 5 high-value facilities: 2 aviation fuel depots, a missile storage hangar, an ammunition stockpile, and a fortified warehouse holding emergency rations. To cripple these nodes was to starve North Korea's military of firepower, fuel, and food in one strike. At 4:46 a.m., the first drone crashed through the roof of a fuel depot. The impact caused an eruption equivalent to 90,000 gallons of aviation fuel to ignite at once, lighting up the sky like a false dawn. The shockwave shook residential areas 10 kilometers away. Nearby military buildings collapsed. Seconds later, 7 more UAVs dove into the missile storage hangar. Inside were an estimated 60 short-range ballistic missiles awaiting deployment. The detonation set off a catastrophic chain reaction. Missiles cooked off one by one, streaking uncontrolled into the sky before exploding mid-air. Observers counted 23 secondary detonations in just 2 minutes, each echoing like an earthquake. At 4:51 a.m., the swarm turned on the ammunition stockpile. When the first UAV struck, the result was apocalyptic. Over 12,000 artillery shells detonated simultaneously, producing a blast yield equal to 15 tons of TNT. The ground shook violently, and entire sections of the base disappeared under a mushrooming column of smoke and fire. The final UAVs targeted the ration warehouse, a calculated psychological blow. Explosives tore through walls stacked with grain, rice, and preserved food. Supplies meant to feed 10,000 soldiers for 3 months vanished in an instant, leaving survivors with nothing but ash and hunger. North Korean command centers fell into chaos. Communications were flooded with conflicting reports. Fuel depots destroyed. Missiles lost. Casualties unknown. Officers screamed for anti-aircraft coverage, but the guns had already been silenced. Amid the flames, soldiers ran in every direction, some abandoning their posts entirely. By 4:56 a.m., less than 15 minutes since the wave began, the Kachon base had been gutted. What once housed billions of dollars in strategic reserves now smoldered as twisted steel and burning craters. Ukraine had not just pierced the shield, it had struck directly at the heart of North Korea's ability to wage war. August 28, 2025, 4:58 a.m. The final wave took flight. 20 suicide UAVs remained, and their mission was merciless: sweep the battlefield clean. Unlike the earlier waves, these drones were agile, fitted with micro-turbines that allowed them to dart and pivot in mid-air like hunting birds. Their orders were simple: hunt down what survived. At 5:01 a.m., the drones descended on the outskirts of the Kachon base. Anti-aircraft crews who had scrambled into backup positions were struck before they could fire a shot. Trucks carrying reinforcements erupted into fireballs as UAVs slammed into their engines. Scattered infantry attempted to regroup, but the swarm followed relentlessly. Soldiers sprinted through smoke and rubble only to be torn apart by explosions that tracked them like shadows. By 5:07 a.m., the battlefield was silent except for the roar of flames. The once formidable base was gone. Intelligence analysts later estimated that over $1.2 billion in assets, from fuel reserves to missile stockpiles, had been obliterated in less than 40 minutes. Casualty counts were staggering. More than 1,400 soldiers killed or wounded in the chaos, with entire battalions erased. At 5:09 a.m., the last UAV detonated against a communications relay, severing the base's final link to Pyongyang. In that same moment, the Ukrainian control team shut down their systems, dismantled antennas, and prepared for retreat. Within minutes, the operators vanished into the forest, carrying only laptops and encrypted drives. By dawn, they had melted back across the border, leaving no trace but a smoking ruin behind them. The fury in Pyongyang was immediate. North Korean fighter jets scrambled from air bases at 5:22 a.m., scouring the skies in search of the attackers. But the Ukrainians were already gone. The enemy had been struck, gutted, and humiliated, and yet no one could point to where the blow had come from. Ukraine had written a new chapter in modern warfare: victory through invisibility. By the time the smoke cleared over Kachon, the operation had already carved its place in history. In less than 40 minutes, Ukraine had dismantled one of North Korea's most fortified military complexes. What conventional armies would need weeks of artillery barrages and thousands of troops to accomplish was achieved with 100 improvised UAVs $3 million in resources, and under 50 operators working from the shadows. The numbers spoke louder than any declaration. Over $1.2 billion in destroyed assets, missile stockpiles reduced to ash, fuel depots incinerated, and thousands of troops either killed, wounded, or scattered in disarray. But beyond the destruction, it was the method that stunned military analysts worldwide. Mobility, deception, and speed had triumphed over entrenched firepower. Ukraine had not simply attacked, it had demonstrated that even the most closed, tightly controlled state could be pierced by ingenuity and audacity. For Pyongyang, the humiliation was profound. A base considered untouchable was erased overnight, its defenses blinded, its soldiers left powerless. For Kiev, the message was clear. Technology and courage could level the battlefield against any foe, no matter how distant or how formidable. The geopolitical shockwaves spread far beyond East Asia. Every defense ministry in the world now reconsidered its vulnerabilities, asking, "What if we are next?" This was not just an operation, it was a warning, a demonstration, and perhaps the opening move of a new kind of shadow war, one where the smallest machines could deliver the deadliest outcomes. If you found this analysis insightful and want to support more in-depth breakdowns like this, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to the channel, and hit the bell icon so you never miss the next unfolding conflict.